public hospitals, this is Kenyatta Hospital, it was demanding a deposit of, even now I think, of 200,000 before they admit a COVID patient. And we have a research that was done by even our CAS of health, Mercy Mwangangi doctor. It was established that in a day, people with moderate COVID spend, apart from the deposit, 7,000. Those people with high cases of intensive care in the ICU, they spend up to 63,000 a day. And you know now, half of our population almost is living under $1 a day. Now, is this a death sentence? Or is it God for us all and everyone for himself? So D, I will look at the effects or consequences of out-of-pocket payments on patients and their families. You can just leave the video, it's okay. You can pause it. Out-of-pocket payment, what is the effect on patients and the families? We have results which have shown that the incidence of catastrophic payment is more severe for the poorest households in the rural areas and mainly due to outpatient services. So results have shown that the effect of out-of-pocket payments leads to the proportion of poor people increasing by 2.2% annually. So, which means that between 1 million and 1.1 million people are pushed into poverty every year due to out-of-pocket payments. And so 453,000 Kenyans, how many minutes? Give me some time. So they are pushed into, we've seen that annually we have 1 million being pushed into poverty. And now, having seen all that, we see that the only way we can survive, or especially the indigent or the vulnerable population in Kenya, the only way forward is for them to access a robust health insurance. And so I'm going to, in a nutshell, I'm going to look at the challenges or the problems facing the health insurance that we have, which is majorly NHIF, which is one, we have a low uptake of our insurance in Kenya. It's only 20% of Kenyans have a health cover. Only 20%, which is only 8 million. And so if you ask an actuary, this is unsustainable. Even the 8 billion contributors are not able to sustain the fund. Another one, the question about equity has been raised regarding NHIF because you find people who earn different amount of money contribute the same amount to NHIF. So the question arises about the question of equity that I've raised here. Then there is a next issue is lack of transparency with NHIF. So this is a quote from an NGO that I'll just quote. NHIF cannot be the same person who is collecting money and at the same time utilizing the money. NHIF single-handedly collects premiums from Kenyans and spends without outside checks and balances. Then Jumadan is even better. He says that NHIF is not minimally transparent and it does not disclose how it invests the money it retains and where the profits go. And then there's mismanagement. At the same time, NHIF is very inefficient, spending too much money on administration, but the most contentious question is, this animal we are giving money, how efficient is this animal? All right? Another problem is non-remittance of NHIF deductions, which is common especially amongst public universities, which are struggling with debts they have never remitted. In fact, I was told this during the Masai conference, that this is a major problem with NHIF. The employers don't remit funds. The next thing is the parastatal culture of appointment in Kenya. Every president who comes in, the person who is in power, what he does is he appoints his political friends to state corporations or parastatals. One of them is NHIF. And they just go there to mint money instead of having a professional way. And the last one, and which is very important point, the problem of NHIF, it is KEMSA. You know, all these are state organs or corporations. The role of KEMSA is to ensure their equipment or medicines at a cheap cost. So when we have expensive medicines or equipment from KEMSA, it means NHIF will also have to pay a high cost of funds to the hospitals for treatment. Solutions that I've suggested. So these solutions are, and I will need you to question my solutions because some of them are radical. One of them is there's a need to appoint managers on a competitive basis. Another thing is appointment of fund managers. Fund managers like those in charge of mutual funds to invest these funds that we get for NHIF properly so that we can have the funds maximally used and invested very well. And then another thing, this one, NHIF should be made mandatory to all Kenyans so that it can be sustainable because the 8 million out of 40 million is not sustainable. Another one is high fines for employers who don't remit contributions. The next is Kenyans to pay a monthly or annual contribution which is proportional to their earning. And then NHIF to disclose publicly a quarterly report of its collections, investments, and payments. Another one is, this one especially for us lawyers, we should lobby and do advocacy. Opinion makers, the NGOs, civil society, should lobby and advocate so that we can do one thing to ensure we all have a robust health insurance. Like yesterday, Wamachangi, the senator of Kiambu, was speaking, and he was saying the most of the money that his constituents ask him is money for wagonjwa. Mtoto wangu ni mgonjwa, nyanya yangu ni mgonjwa, mamangu ni mgonjwa. And then, if you can tell these politicians that once you get in power, ensure we have a universal health coverage that is robust, so that usisumbuliwe, so that they can do that. So we need to lobby and advocate. And then, judicial activism and public interest litigations, they are a way forward, especially for us lawyers, so that we can move the government to act with haste, so that they can avail the Kenyans with a universal health coverage, a proper health insurance for the indigent and the vulnerable. Otherwise, when the next pandemic sets in, it will always be God for us all and everyone for himself. Thank you all.
Good afternoon. Today I'm not using the powder pen. I'll be obedient and compliant. Okay. When we want to build an economy that is ravaged, we know the person who is most affected is usually the poor, the marginalized, and the vulnerable. And even before the pandemic emerged, we've always had these people. They're existing. It's not that there's nothing for them. There is, but because of the crises, the problem has been heightened. And so I was taking this opportunity to check how COVID pandemic has either made the life of these vulnerable people better or worse. But you can guess, can only be worse. Okay, so social protection, I discussed about social protection because it's the only avenue through government is able to provide for citizens or cushion them when there's a disaster or there's a crisis. Or even not when there is a crisis, but when they themselves are unable to take care of themselves because of their social, economic status. And this includes both men, women, and the intersex, as I was rightly informed by Ruth Mainensi. Okay, No, I think I'm going to leave the introduction because we know what COVID has done. But the key thing that I want us to understand that social protection are strategies that are used or more concerned about preventing, managing, and overcoming crisis situations or disasters, you know, and purposely to ensure the well-being of the citizens are not highly affected, or their problems are not as heightened, or made more difficult in comparison to the life they had before the crisis. So this paper I've divided into 4 portions, actually 5. One, I have a conceptual framework, which I'm not going to delve into, but I think we've not talked about human rights-based approaches, so I'm going to talk about that one. This one, I am adopting human rights-based approach for one reason. Human rights-based approach, and I'm glad UNDP is here. They're the ones who keep talking about human rights-based approach, that should be involved in programming,